Welcome to Kids in the 90s. This is Jeremy again, and today, a bonus episode. So before we get into the week-to-week subscription, I've just got a bonus episode. A couple of them I'm going to throw out to kind of give you something to listen to until the next one. I got another guy from work. He's actually been super excited today. His name is Kris. Kris, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us when you were born, kind of that stuff.
Hey, this is Kristopher Gray. I was born in 1984 in Cordell, Oklahoma.
So he was born in 84. As I told you before, I was born in 85, so about a year difference. So as we talk about the topic today, you'll see the perspective is going to be a lot closer than when I talked with Colton yesterday, being a 9-year span. So today, I was talking with Kris. We've kind of been hitting about it. He's been real excited, and so he said that he wanted to talk about different toys in the 90s. So we kind of talked about a bunch of them, created a list of our own kind of toys that we remember and kind of a little bit of info about them. So we're going to kind of just talk about these toys, and I bet you remember most of them, whether you saw them or actually played with them. If you saw pictures, you would definitely remember some of this stuff, but by name you may have a hard time. But if you Google it, look it up, you'll get a clear picture of what we're talking about. Like, oh yeah, I played with that thing. That thing was awesome. Or that thing was trash. I just skipped it all together. So, so Kris, why don't you just kind of start us off, and I'll kind of join in with you, and we'll just kind of bounce it back and forth.
You know, a big thing for me growing up in the 90s were the commercials for new toys. That was a huge thing back in those days, and it just got you super excited, and you just begged your parents to take you to the store to look at that kind of stuff that you saw on TV, just all different kinds of things that came out. My first gift that I got in the 90s that I remember with all my heart was my first Super Soaker that I received. It was a Super Soaker 50. It was neon yellow, and I played with it every day. Summer, winter, it didn't matter.
We're just water fighting, getting the Super Soakers, and I mean they progressed quite a bit. I mean you had a big old Gatling gun looking Super Soaker after a while. You brought up a good point about commercials before. I kind of want to talk about that for a second, because they still have commercials for toys. I mean, we were actually joking about some that would talk about probably in like a different segment, such as like Mr. Bucket and stuff like I hinted yesterday about subliminal messages, seems like. But there was also different toy stores. Like nowadays, the toy store has gone away. It's just Amazon pretty much, or Target's your toy store, just a general department store. Toys R Us is supposedly making another comeback, but I mean, they went bankrupt and closed. KB Toys, all them places. You probably remember KB Toys.
Yes, I was going to say
that's
KB
old school.
Toys in the mall.
Exactly. So those are things that we don't see as much. I mean, they're probably little mom and pop-ish, maybe in certain locations, but the overall big toy store that everybody tried to go to isn't around anymore. But yeah, the Super Soaker was I bet every kid, not every kid, but probably 80% of kids probably had some type of water gun that they would use, because as kids we liked to play in the water, whether it was a little sprinkler or you actually had guns and there's probably more dudes, but we know girls were playing with Super Soakers too, because they were on my block. So another thing that kind of Kris and I talked about earlier was the Skip It. So I actually used to be a PE teacher, still certified, but the Skip It, and we used them in schools as well. The Skip It though was actually an 80s toy. I was surprised when I was looking this up. It was actually an 80s toy, but like a lot of these toys on the list, and like we kind of hinted out in the last one, is Nickelodeon actually started producing these toys and giving them a revamp and commercials and stuff that actually got them back on the market and boosted their selling for kids and families, and Skip It's one of those. I mean, I don't know if it was just updating it to have brighter neon colors like the 90s, but the Skip It made a big uptick in the 90s, and I know I played with the Skip It, and you were saying you played with the Skip It, and like I said, it's still in a lot of the schools nowadays for the PE program.
Yep. The girl that lived across the street from me when I was a young kid had a skip it, and I would go over to her house and steal it and play with it in her driveway. She probably thought I was odd, but I loved it. Really did.
Did you ever reach the end of the skip it? Like you skipped it so long that it ticked back to 0 or just stuck on like 999.
There's a button on there to reset, and I'd always get going. I was competitive, athletic back in the day, and she would always can't clear it out, and I'd be angry and mad. So, but I did love it.
That's like I don't want to go into that. We'll wait for TV shows, but there's a good reference with that,
right?
But yeah, and on this list, I mean, when you're a kid, a lot of stuff, when you look at it, skipping around is, if you talk to someone about skipping, you're technically, quote unquote, don't politically correct me, but you're given like a feminist like a feminine attribute when you say skipping to somebody, even though it's a locomotor skill that you have to learn in by the 2nd grade, really. But a lot of these toys, it didn't matter when you're that young if it was really geared towards girls or guys. When you were really young, a lot of these toys kind of crossed over, and we'll see some of that too. Another thing, let's go into this, because we talked about this, and this was actually a fake toy on a movie that had so much mail-in campaign that the company actually made it in 1993. And if you remember Home Alone 2, it was the Talk Boy. You record what someone says and you can play it back. Just a little handheld thing. Mm-hmm. And that was just crazy that they got so much support, which we do now. I mean, if you think about petitions and stuff, that still happens today. But the toy wasn't even real. It just was that cool in the movie that it got made. I mean, that's just kind of crazy with how that happened, and it happens still today if you think about it.
It does. I remember asking for one. I remember begging my parents for one, and they didn't understand why I needed it or what they were like, what for? Are you giving depositions? Like, what are you doing? And I just thought,
Mom, can you repeat that? What's under your shirt, son? Talk Boy.
Oh man, and you could slow it down on the replay and have different voices with it.
I think that was the coolest part, was you could switch up the voice and you play with it. It's along the same lines as when Tommy Boy he's doing the Darth Vader into the fans. I mean, you were just doing your own version with the Talk Boy.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, what else you got on your list? I mean, we got a long list, so we'll just kind of fly through it. But I mean, you had a couple others that were pretty good.
I mean, another game changer for me in the childhood, and just something that just sticks in my heart, is also the year for my birthday. I received the Ninja Turtles news van like setup with, you could take it apart and open it up, and it was just amazing. It came with everything, all these little things, and it's just so intricate and so different for me at that time. I played with it. G.I. Joes were super famous for my brother in the 80s, and then I had Ninja Turtles, and it was just one of those gifts that I just was hooked on them from then on.
I mean, action figures alone were huge, and I mean, if you go to Target, they make action figures of anything. Yeah. And Ninja Turtles, we were talking earlier, and we actually had the same. Usually you run into people that like a different Ninja Turtle than you, but I actually figured Kris would like the same Ninja Turtle, so we both said Michelangelo was the best, and you wouldn't really have a lot of the lingo and slang of the Sode that I'm going to be giving you without kind of Michelangelo, because he always spouted that out. But yeah, Ninja Turtles van was good. Ronnie was also talking to me about it's like the Thunderdome or something that popped open, and I was like, well, Ronnie, that's actually kind of like the Mighty Max toys, and so we can hop into that. The Mighty Max was like the boys' version of the Polly Pocket. Oh, and so you popped it open, you had little pieces in there, staircases and things. It was like a double-decker little mini play set that you could do, and you would just, use your imagination and play with that. So that kind of was kind of along the same lines. A big one that we both talked about and loved, and I know many of you do too, was Pogs. And Pogs was a game. This is like that. When you think about it now, you're like, really? And you tell people that weren't in the 90s, and they're like, that's stupid. But Pogs was awesome, and it was actually originated in Hawaii in 1991. I wasn't in Hawaii, but once we caught on to it, I think it was a commercial on like Nickelodeon or something like anything else, and they were talking about Pogs, and everybody started doing it. You go wherever you could, and you would get more and more of these just little cardboard circles with different designs, and you had to get the cool designs. You see it in the store, you want that design. And then we got to slammers, and slammers were like the thing. You would get cool slammers. They made all kinds of Pogs. I mean, you could get Pogs with biblical verses and stuff on them, and slammers too. And so you would get these big old, a lot of times plastic slammers that were engraved, maybe had some tie-dye kind of metallic looking colors, or be solid or whatever, or even metallic, and you would get a slammer. And when you got real creative and you didn't have the money to go get a new slammer, you'd be looking around. I was telling you earlier about how I took a big old heavy washer, and it had like it was probably for like a washing machine or something, but it was a big old hefty washer. And it was cool. It was like shaped a little bit different. It had a little etchings on it, and had a good weight to it. And that's kind of what you needed with a Pog, was something that felt good when you slam it down, so you could flip as many of those cardboard circles. And because basically it was play to keep. So it was like pink slips for Toyz.
Yep,
you
absolutely.
hit that, pops over, and you're like, that's my favorite one. You go, I'm crying.
Yep.
Rematch.
Yeah, I do remember there in Penn Square Mall, there was a kiosk for a short period of time near the fountains and the escalators on the bottom floor, anybody who knows. And it was a Pog kiosk, and you could buy different ones, and you could buy slammers. And I remember my mother being with me, and I begged for them every time we went, and she bought me a slammer that was solid metal, had a picture of O.J. Simpson on the front, and it said Juice on it. And I was in 4th grade. That's 1994, 95-ish, somewhere in there when the trial was going on.
What's funny about Pogs is I'm a big board gamer, and we'll get into a board game, 90s board game in the future. But I'm a big board gamer, and a new board game that came out a couple years ago was called Dinosaur Island. And if you backed it on Kickstarter, one thing you got was a set of Pogs. So they made a bunch of, and that whole game is made in 90s flair. It's got a lot of highlighter, orange, green, pink, the font, everything about it's pretty much, it's like they threw up 90s at you. And it actually came with a set of Pogs. They're a little bit smaller, the majority, but they were still Pogs, so it's pretty cool. Just kind of a nostalgia throwback, along with a couple slap bracelets and things. So I'm just going to talk about a few more, and Kris will give us a few more, and we'll go through them, since I don't want this to run too long for y'all, since I know a lot of y'all listen to this, maybe riding to work or something. But we didn't want to leave the ladies out. So like I said, the Mighty Max was a lot like the Polly Pocket. Beanie Babies was big in 93 to 2000, kind of died off. You can still find them, but they're not that popular anymore. A really cool one for me, and like I said, a lot of these things, you think that they're 90s because they were so prevalent to us and important, but a lot of them were actually made technically in a different age. So another cool one we talked about was a creepy crawly oven, and it was like an easy bake oven for boys that could, or girls if they wanted, but you would create these slimy bugs and stuff. And I was actually found out that was originally called the Thing Maker in 1964. And they redid it in the 90s as the creepy crawly oven. So, I mean, these things are crazy. Pogo sticks, I was thinking, man, that's a big old 90s thing. No, that was actually done in the 70s. Hacky sack. I was thinking, dang, we did that on Playground all the time.
Yep.
Kids with Jinko jeans out there kicking the ball
Chain
up.
wallets.
But guess what? The sport of hacky sack was created in 1972. It just became popular at schools from 90s to 2000, where you do it in between periods. The Tiger 2XL was a little robot guy, kind of like a Teddy Ruxpin that wasn't really animatronic. You just put a cassette tape, but it was a trivia bot. And that right there taught me, I will never forget it from this, but the number one, I was a big basketball fan growing up. I love basketball. And so Wilt Chamberlain being the only person to score 100 points in a game, that was the number one trivia question. I didn't miss that one. I never forgot that one. The only other thing I have on my list I want to talk about, since a lot of them, either on your list, my list, it would take too long, or maybe it's on the Toys That Made Us show. I don't want to get into all that stuff like Stretch Armstrong and all that stuff, but Gak, another Nickelodeon toy that was just based off Double Dare. It was just amazing. You took slime, and it was a little bit more consistent. You would play around with it like a silly putty, and then when you put it in, it would make those fart noises. And they also did, which is on your list too. You want to give them your updated Gak noise there?
Yeah. So I currently purchased something called the Tutor, which is a device you can purchase online, and it came out long time ago, but this guy's reinvented it and released it. It's about $7. You can buy them online, and it's just a handheld toy.
That's fake. That's not Kris really tooting.
No, it's not at all. Thank you for clearing that up.
He might have threw one in there, but I don't smell it yet, so I think we're good.
Oh, God.
But the other thing they did, which is on your list too, was the Floam.
Floam, and yes.
That was the beaded version, which was actually amazing. It would suck in air and not let it out as much because of that, but the feel was totally different than Gak.
Totally different, and my parents took away the Gak because it was I just couldn't get away from making the noises in the in the container that it came in, so they took that away from me. But I got Floam. I remember one Christmas, and just the texture and it was just interesting. Never really played with anything like that. Mm-hmm. Took it to school with me. I always had it around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean everybody had those.
Everybody had that.
What else did I maybe miss that you might have also? Because I know we talked about more, but.
We could go on and on and on, but man, something that I never wanted to ask for, but I always really wanted, was a Light Bright. I always played with my friends, and my neighbors had them, and I always liked to play with them and do different stuff because your creative side comes out. But I never got one as a gift. I don't know why, but I've always had an attraction to them.
I had a Light Bright. I had that creative side. You put the black piece of paper up, and you just poke in the dots into the design that said, and it lights up different colors, red, blue, green, yellow. Yeah. And just makes that design. Yeah. So I mean, as Kris said, we could go on all day. There's a whole bunch of other pictures and things that we saw and thought about as we were talking about it. You have one more?
Another one is Spirograph, which was a group of plastic rings that you would get in a set, and you would just lay them flat on the paper, and you could take your pen and just rotate it inside the design and go smaller to larger and make an incredible design or piece of art. And I definitely had that and used it a ton. Yeah.
So we talked about 90s slang. I've decided to coin it the slang of the Sode. So today's 90s slang of the Sode is gonna be all that in a bag of chips. Remember all that in a bag of chips? It was not like you're not just all that, but you're all that and one up you a bag of chips. Remember that?
Yep. I remember hearing guys say it, older guys, saying it to girls like, man, she's all that in a bag of chips.
And what really pushed it forward, and I was telling Mac that she didn't get it, and then I started singing a song and she got it, was all for one skills. She's got the potion and the motion to cure my ills. She's got skills. And then it would get around, they'd be talking, hey, look at that. She's all that and a bag of chips. And it was like, boom. That just, everybody, I mean, in my circle, everybody started saying that from that song. I mean, you might have heard it before, but that really kicked it off for us. So that's the slang of the Sode. The spoiler alert here today is from 1993. It's a family film called Free Willy. So I'm going to spoil it for you now. Willy gets freed. Tune in to us next time. I don't know who's going to be here. Like I said, could be Kris, could be a couple of us. We're trying to get a group so we can get a few more opinions. It's a little bit longer episode, but I like it. a lot of good discussion. I hope you enjoyed and reminisced with us in the toy department here at KB Toys. Unlicensed. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, who knows what it'll be? Could be something. If you're not into this stuff, you may be into something else. We're going to talk about everything 90s, so tune in with us next time. Thanks.
See ya.